The morning air in London felt different. It was quiet, soft, and filled with something that couldn't be explained, something in people's hearts. Long before the sun came up, crowds had started to gather near the cathedral. Silence. Some whispered to each other, and many just held hands. They were waiting for something special. Not just a royal event, not just a show. They were waiting for a moment that would touch their hearts forever. Margaret Thompson, a 72-year-old grandmother from Yorkshire, arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning. With her granddaughter Emma, she held a folded chair in one hand and an old photo in the other. The photo was worn out from a black-and-white image of Queen Elizabeth II from her coronation day. Margaret had watched that day on a small television as a little girl. Now, she stood in the same city, waiting for another royal memory. Her eyes were full of tears already, and the sun hadn't even risen. People around her were just as emotional. Some had traveled overnight by bus or train. Others came in cars with their children, waving tiny Union Jack flags. Some were dressed in royal-themed clothes, but most were dressed simply, wearing jackets and scarves, trying to stay warm as the wind gently passed over the cobblestone streets. At the same time, inside the tall stone walls of the palace, Prince William stood quietly in front of a long mirror. The room was large and filled with golden light. It was the same room where his father had once prepared before important events. The same mirror had shown his grandfather's reflection. Now, it was William's turn. And he didn't just see himself, he saw all of them too. His hands were calm, but his heart was heavy. He fixed his tie slowly. Every small move meant something. He thought about his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, and how she always looked strong, even in sad or difficult times. He also thought about his mother, Princess Diana. She had taught him how to feel, how to love people, and how to speak with kindness. Today was not just another duty. It felt bigger. It felt like the past and the future had come together in this one moment. The large door opened quietly. Catherine walked in. She looked calm and beautiful, her dress moving like soft water with each step. She walked toward William, her eyes gentle and strong. When she reached him, she didn't speak. She simply stood beside him, watching him through the mirror. She could feel what he felt without asking. Their journey had started long ago in university. Since then, they had faced many things together: marriage, children, press, public events, grief, pressure. But their love had stayed strong. They had become more than husband and wife. They were a team. Two people who held each other up when the world was watching. Kate reached out and gently fixed a part of William's collar. Her fingers were soft but sure. William gave her a small smile, his eyes full of emotion. He didn't need to say anything. She already knew what was in his heart. Outside, the crowds were getting larger. People stood shoulder to shoulder, smiling and waiting. Some shared sandwiches and tea. Others held up signs or waved flags. Strangers started talking like old friends. There was something magical in the air, something uniting them. The sound of footsteps and voices behind the palace walls grew louder. The carriage was being prepared. Horses were lined up in front of the palace, shining and still. The guards stood ready in their red coats and black hats. Everything was perfect. But inside the palace, time seemed to slow down. William looked out the window and saw the ocean of people waiting. Saw young children on their parents' shoulders. Saw older people with walking sticks. He saw soldiers in uniform, mothers, with babies, students, teachers, people from all walks of life, and they were all waiting for him. For them, he turned to Kate. She was already looking at him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They simply stood there, side by side, knowing what this moment meant, not just for them, but for everyone. As the bells began to ring in the distance, they reached for each other's hands. It was time. The bells rang across the city like a soft wave of music, rising through the early morning air and reaching every corner of London. People stopped what they were doing. Silence, gentle and powerful, moved through the crowd like a whisper. Everyone knew it was time. The carriage carrying William and Kate was on its way. Children sat still in their parents' arms. Teenagers who had come just for fun were now quiet, wide-eyed. Grandmothers held their breath. Young couples leaned closer together. No one wanted to miss a single second. They all felt that this was history, not just royal history, but a personal one, something they would tell their children and grandchildren one day. Inside the moving carriage, William and Kate sat side by side. The inside was warm and golden, but their thoughts were with the people waiting outside. William looked out the window. His heart was full. He saw faces lining the roads, people of every age, background, and color, waving flags and holding signs that said things like, "We love you, William and Kate," or "Forever, our Princess Diana's son." William felt a deep tug in his chest. He remembered walking behind his mother's coffin as a young boy. He remembered the pain in his heart, the weight of the cameras, the silence of the crowds. And now, all these years later, he was not that boy anymore. He was a father, a husband, and a future king. But that boy still lived inside him. Kate gently placed her hand on his. He turned toward her and gave a small nod. She understood. Always did. As the carriage turned the final corner, the cathedral came into view. Its tall stone towers rose into the morning sky like guardians of time. Stairs leading up to it were lined with flowers and guards standing at perfect attention. And in front of the steps, a sea of people stood in complete silence, waiting for the moment that would come next. The carriage stopped. A deep, beautiful quiet spread across the crowd like a soft blanket. Even the birds in the sky seemed to pause. William stepped out first. He stood tall, but not stiff. There was something gentle about the way he moved, like someone carrying both strength and sadness at the same time. His eyes scanned the crowd not with distance, but with connection. He wasn't looking down at them. He was looking at them. Then Kate stepped out. She moved with grace, her dress flowing in the soft wind, her eyes shining with emotion. Together, they stood on the first step, side by side, facing the crowd. They didn't wave right away, rush to speak. They just stood there, and the people felt it. They felt the love, the grief, the memory of the Queen, the spirit of Princess Diana, the hope for the future. The warmth of two people who had grown up in front of them, fallen in love, built a family, and now stood ready to lead with kindness and heart. An older man in the crowd, a veteran in a navy coat with medals pinned to his chest, wiped his eyes. A young mother with a baby wrapped in a Union Jack blanket leaned into her husband's shoulder. Teenagers who had once joked about coming for the social media moment were now recording with trembling hands, their faces soft with wonder. Inside, the press box journalists who had covered dozens of royal events looked at one another, quietly nodding. They knew this was different. Then William stepped forward and began to speak. His voice was calm but full of feeling. He didn't read from paper. He didn't follow a script. He spoke from the heart. He talked about the Queen, his grandmother, about how she had served the country with love and duty until the very end. He spoke about his mother, how her compassion shaped him. And then he paused. He looked out over the faces, thousands of them. His voice trembled slightly. He said, "Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for standing with them. Thank you for remembering." Kate stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm. Her touch gave him strength, and he continued. He spoke about love, about service, about the importance of standing together in hard times. And as he did, many in the crowd began to cry, not because of sadness, but because of the honesty in his voice. This was not just a prince. This was a man who had lived through loss, grown through duty, and chosen to lead with heart. And beside him stood a woman who shared it all. Together they were more than royal. They were real, and the people felt it. The silence after Prince William's words was deep and powerful. No one clapped. No one cheered. They simply stood there, holding their breath, hearts full, eyes wet. For a few long seconds, it felt like time had stopped. People had come to see royalty, but what they saw was something even more rare: true emotion, true love, and true connection. An older woman standing near the front wiped her eyes with a tissue. She had lived through the Queen's entire reign, watched Diana's wedding and funeral, and had followed William's life since he was a child. She whispered to the young girl beside her. He's his mother's son. The girl nodded, her face shining with tears, though she was too young to remember Diana. Somehow, through William, she felt like she knew her. Up at the cathedral steps, William lowered the microphone. His eyes scanned the crowd, not with the look of someone giving a speech, but with the gaze of someone searching for face, ill people, real hearts. Kate stood quietly beside him. She hadn't spoken yet, but her presence was strong. Her calm smile and warm eyes said just as much as any words. William reached for her hand again, and the simple act touched everyone deeply. This was not the staged love people sometimes see on TV. This was a real bond, grown through years of pressure, pain, love, and loyalty. They had faced the world together, and now they were facing it again, with millions watching and feeling with them. A soft sound began to move through the crowd, not words, but quiet sniffles, soft sighs, the sound of hearts breaking and healing at the same time. It was not just about the speech. It was everything. The moment, the memories, the hope. Then Kate stepped forward. She didn't carry notes. She didn't read anything. Her voice was gentle, but steady. She thanked the people, not just for being there, but for their love. She spoke of the Queen and the lessons she had learned from her. She said how proud she was to stand beside William and how deeply they both felt the responsibility of carrying forward something so important. She said, "We are not here just to represent the crown. We are here to stand with you. We are part of you." And that was it. That was the moment everything changed. It was no longer just a ceremony. It's no longer a royal tradition. It became a human moment. A little boy sitting on his father's shoulders waved a small flag, and a stranger beside them bent down and gave him a biscuit from her bag. A man who had come alone reached out and held the hand of the elderly woman beside him. Strangers hugged. Tears were shared. It didn't matter who people were or where they came from. At that moment, they were one crowd, one people. Kate looked at William, and he nodded. Slowly, they began to step down the stairs together, hand in hand, toward the people, and then something beautiful happened. The crowd didn't shout or push forward. They parted gently. People made way. They didn't rush. They watched in respectful silence as the couple walked along the edge of the crowd, stopping to shake hands, smile, and share small words. An old war veteran stood proudly in his uniform. William walked over to him and saluted. The man's chin trembled, and he saluted back.
"Ow."
"Your grandmother was a great lady," he said. William answered, "She loved this country, just like we do." Kate knelt beside a young girl in a wheelchair, gently brushing her hair from her eyes and saying, "You look beautiful today." The girl smiled so wide, it was as if the sun had touched her heart. Every step they took, every person they met, made the crowd feel something deeper. This wasn't about kings or queens. This was about people, connection, love, and just when it felt like the emotions couldn't grow any stronger. William looked up and saw something in the crowd that made him stop. A woman holding a simple cardboard sign. It read, "Thank you, William." Diana would be proud. His eyes filled with tears. He didn't hide them. He simply stood there, hand tight in Kate's, and let the moment live. For him, for her, for everyone. The sign in the crowd stayed in William's eyes long after he looked away. "Thank you, William." Diana would be proud. It was a simple message on a piece of cardboard, but it hit him harder than any speech or ceremony ever had. It always carried her memory quietly, deep inside. But in that moment, it felt like she was there right beside him. Walking with him and Kate through the crowd, Kate noticed the tears in William's eyes. Without saying a word, she gently squeezed his hand. It was a quiet comfort, something she had always given him in moments like these. The crowd stood silently, some still crying, others smiling with full hearts. No one wanted to break the magic. The moment had become more than just a royal walk. It had become something sacred. Slowly, William and Kate moved back toward the cathedral steps. The ceremony was over, but no one moved. They didn't want to leave. They didn't want the feeling to end. People just stood there, holding on to the moment like it was something rare and beautiful, which it was. At the edge of the crowd, a little girl ran forward. She was holding a small bouquet of white flowers. Police officer started to stop her, but Kate saw her and shook her head softly. She knelt down as the girl approached. The child placed the flowers in Kate's hands and whispered, "These are for Princess Diana." Kate's face softened. She pulled the girl into a gentle hug and whispered back, "She would have loved you." William stood nearby, watching, his chest full of emotion. He had been to hundreds of royal events. He had shaken hands with world leaders, walked in processions, stood in palaces. But this was the moment he would remember. A little girl, a small bouquet, and a message from the heart. The people began to clap, not loud or wild, but soft and full of feeling. It was like applause mixed with prayer. They weren't just clapping for a prince and princess. They were clapping for kindness, for truth, for everything this moment had meant. Up on nearby balconies, people waved. Some threw flower petals down. To the crowd below, the petals floated through the air like snowflakes made of love. Children reached up to catch them, their laughter mixing with the soft sound of the cathedral bells still ringing in the background. A group of elderly women stood together, wiping their eyes. One of them said, "We've never seen anything like this. Not even during the Queen's Golden Jubilee." And it was true. This wasn't about celebration. It was about connection. William and Kate finally turned to leave. The carriage waiting quietly by the steps. But before stepping in, William paused. He looked out one last time over the sea of faces. He wanted to remember every detail, the smiles, the tears, the signs, the silence. He raised his hand in a small wave, not the formal royal wave, just a simple, grateful gesture. Kate did the same, and the people waved back, some with flags, some with tissues, some with nothing but open hands. As the carriage pulled away, people began to talk again gently. They shared stories, photos, hugs, even stayed in the square long after the couple had gone. They didn't want to forget. They didn't want to go back to the world just yet. Margaret Thompson, the elderly woman who had arrived at 4 a.m, held her granddaughter's hand tightly. She smiled through her tears and whispered, "You'll remember this for the rest of your life, Emma. So will I." Emma nodded, her voice soft. They made everyone feel like they mattered. Somewhere behind them, a teenage boy who had come just for fun turned to his friend and said, "I didn't expect to cry today." His friend replied, "Me neither." In the palace hours later, William and Kate sat quietly in their private room. They didn't speak at first. They were tired. Yes, but it was more than that. They were full. William finally looked at Kate and said, "Did you feel it too?" She nodded, every second. He took her hand the same way he had that morning before they left. "They didn't come just to see us," he said. "They came to be seen." And that was it. The reason why that moment mattered. Why the silence had felt holy. Why even the strongest people in the crowd had cried. It wasn't about crowns or cameras. It was about heart. And on that day, in the center of a city built on centuries of tradition, two people stood not as royals but as humans, and they made a nation feel loved.